was put in a wheelchair because I had broken bones, torn ligaments in both knees. I've had surgery on both knees. It was like, it just was one of the most difficult things I've had to go through as also a single parent.
Welcome to episode number 3 of the TMAC Impact Show. On this episode, I interviewed a friend of mine named Jusup Sandoval, who is a creative genius. He runs a YouTube channel as well as writes music, and Jusup is also a lover of fitness. He has been running very, very long distances for a long period of time. Recently had to overcome an injury where he realized he had what's called discitis vertebral osteomyelitis. I hope I pronounced that right, but realized that on like mile 30 of a 100-mile race where he ended up having to go through some pretty serious medical procedures and is still working through some of that, which was no stranger to him because back in 2014, he was in a wheelchair for a period of time after a snowmobile accident. He has been through all sorts of things, has a lot of different life experience from traveling the world and his creative stuff and the opportunities that has opened up for him. And he's also a lover of cold therapy, which is something that I recently discovered. So we talk about all these things and so much more. I hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I did having the conversation. The timing of this actually worked pretty well because this is the first time I've ever recorded a podcast. So thank you for being the first recorder.
Even though it's the third episode, right?
Yeah, it's exactly. So the first one's going to be me doing a monologue, just sharing kind of the vision for the podcast. The second is a friend, mentor, childhood hero of mine, Brett Rasmussen, who's like the pioneer of backcountry snowmobiling. And you're actually episode number 3 and the third most watched YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And so you told me before we started that you have a shirt. I want to see what your shirt looks like.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, it states what you just did. Third most watched YouTube channel.
I dig it. So you have a YouTube channel.
I do.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
So it plays videos.
Wow, no way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what you just want to know what the content is of it, or
exactly, because so many people. I have another friend who runs a successful YouTube channel. He does bladesmithing stuff, but you're probably completely different than that. So what's Jusup's vision, I guess, with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because a lot of people ask me, like, what are you doing with the channel? And I do a lot of just variation, just very different stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is just kind of the journey of I'm constantly pushing myself to make a good video. Like, what does it take to tell a good story? And what does it take to become the third most watched YouTube channel? Like, all of that type of stuff. So, you see a lot of variation in the type of content and the type of stuff that I do. Like, I have one where I delivered bull testicles to influencers in LA from Montana. And then I have one where it's me running 100 miles and almost dying because I ended up sick, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And then like the last one was called airdropping video from Hunter Biden's laptop, where all I did was just change the name of my phone to Hunter Biden's laptop and went and airdropped random people. And it's just like, it's fun ideas and things that come to mind that I can turn into a story. Mm-hmm. It's a mixture of my life and, I'm just having fun with it. There's going to be fictional stories. Like, there's a whole series that I'm starting to put together that is kind of more, I would say it's very close to like a Borat style, where there's a fictional underlying story with real things that happen, real events and stuff that, but then it has just like this fictional story, like, this character, like Borat, for example, is this character that's trying to reach Pamela Anderson. And then there's these real things that happen, but there's a funny story that kind of ties it all together. And so that's like another series that I'm doing, like with the Mr. Beast stuff. And, that you've seen when I started a couple years ago. I never finished editing that, and so now I'm putting that stuff together, and it's going to have this fun kind of fictional story, but it's more of just having fun with telling stories and putting little messages in there in subliminal ways to kind of just promote positivity and pushing yourself, like doing 100 miles and stuff like that. Like all of that was real, but there is an underlying piece of it of like overcoming something and pushing myself, because that's constantly what I'm doing. I'm always pushing myself to be better and to grow as a human.
Yeah. Okay. That's really cool. And so have you like always been this creative storytelling type person, or is that something you're like, I want to become that? Or has it been like since Jusup was a little guy?
Yeah, I mean, since I was a kid, I was making videos when I was 10 years old. Like,
Really?
yeah, I mean, we were vlogging before vlogging was a thing, and I wish I would have started a YouTube channel. I wish I would have uploaded it, but my mom just started converting. We had like a mini DV camera, and I have hundreds of tapes of us just like doing silly things that, there was no YouTube at this time. So this is all pure original ideas of doing crazy things like snowboarding off of our roof and, snowboarding off the roof. We ran around in Spider-Man costumes, like my brother and his friend dressed up as Spider-Man, interviewing people, like things that you see people doing now, but
Yeah.
like they're mostly replicated off of other things that you see on YouTube.
Yep.
This was like just looking at all those old footage. It's crazy to see, wow, that was all like original ideas. Like we didn't pull that from anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've been creative. I think like my whole family, like my dad and my little brother, me, like we're very, very creative, and it's just kind of manifesting in different ways. And I'm really on this mission to pursue it as an actual career, to where I can take that creativity, blend it. We're also very logical. It's a really good balance. Like I'm really good at math, and all through school I was getting great grades and stuff like that. Well, I could get great grades. I slacked off on homework stuff, but test-wise, I crushed tests. I just hated homework because I didn't feel like I ever needed to. I felt like homework was studying, and I was like, I didn't need to study. But yeah, so we have a good balance of logic and creativity, and I find a lot of fun in building things that kind of blend that, and kind of building a business. And I think like even just when I look at life in general, I have the ability to build. Like it feels like a project to me to understand who I am, understand neurochemistry, and put the pieces together to build the life that I want to have and live.
Okay. And utilizing video. So
I also make music. So it's
that's right.
And a lot of people ask that. They're like, you must love making videos. And it's not necessarily videos. I love creating and creating with people that I enjoy creating with.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't really matter the medium necessarily. Like I just love to create, and if I'm with people creating and collaborating with them on, so it could be a painting or something that is fulfilling, but it's creating with people that I connect with, people that I love and respect, and even just sitting down here doing this, like we're creating something and building a bond and a connection together by doing this and taking this time to do it. Yep. And I enjoy that. I enjoy those types of connections.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I love and respect the people like yourself who just are always trying to create something. I have a little bit of a limiting belief on, being a creator, if you will. I used to post all the time on social media when I was a backcountry snowmobile guide, riding every single day and just posting on my story. But every time I would try, I feel like I overcomplicated things.
We all do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, which is why I appreciate it, because we already had this YouTube setup for our real estate business, but now that allowed us to merge over into the podcast pretty easy. And so with that, you were doing videos since you were little, and I know a little bit of your music stuff as I've listened to it, but for the people who don't know, what exactly, does your music look like? Like what genre would you consider it to be?
I definitely feel it's pop. Like it falls in the pop category. And a lot of I have just always kind of written music and lyrics and poetry and stuff like that since I was younger. I mean, just again, it's just more an expression. I really enjoy it because it felt very therapeutic in the sense of um, I could creatively express what's going on in my head with a creative twist on it, and there's a slight detachment to, I could build a character that I could express how I'm feeling through this character in the song,
Hmm.
um, and it I always kind of had an insecurity around actually singing though and doing anything like that, and so I never really turned it into anything that I put out. And then recently, I would say a few years ago, I made a deal with a friend, Bobby Crane, who is probably one of the most talented musicians and producers, just all around artists in general. We made a deal where if I made a music video for him, he would make some songs for me, and so we did this trade. And I was such a big fan of like his production and what he does that I was like, okay, just like you do your thing. I have this goofy country song that I wrote, um, can you turn it into a not like a trendy country song, make it a little dancey and stuff? And I feel like he crushed it and he did a really good job, and it was so fun that I was like, well, cool, let's do more. Like,
Yeah.
he introduced me to auto tune, and then I, I was like, amazing.
Yeah. You're like, that singing insecurity's gone.
Yeah. But it's just more fun. And like now with my YouTube videos, I really want to tie them together to where like I can use. I was talking to somebody of like how cool would it be to have a music or a video idea that like turns into a mini musical within it. It was just like breaks out and dance and sing song. Like that would be hilarious in the middle
Yeah.
of a YouTube video. And I have like one song, Beast Burger in Paradise, which I released the song, but it plays into a video, and it was predominantly made for that video.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like I made a song to go and it's obviously listenable, but it was made specifically for the video. And I want to kind of continue to grow that type of creativity. Is like, how do I take these different elements of fun creativity, and then it also brings in other people like Bobby helps produce a lot of this stuff, and then how do I blend them to make bigger projects instead of a bunch of little short things that we live in a very fast food style content delivery system. I feel like
Hmm.
it's just a constant flow of what can be reproduced really quickly and get out, like pushed out, and what works for the algorithm. We're thinking about the algorithms, we're editing for retention, we're doing all of these things to keep people there for as much time as possible, but that jeopardizes a lot of the art side. And I think there's a cool blend that can be made, and you can put some focus on things that like bring a lot of value in putting a ton of effort into, and then also have these short things that fit the retention, because you got to have both. Like if you want, I think that's what happens when you become a starving artist, is like you don't want to sell out. You don't want to do, like I've had people, I started upping my thumbnail game and make it a little more clickbaity. And obviously, I deliver on these titles, but they're
Yep.
definitely very clickbaity. And I'm looking at videos now in a way of, if I start with the thumbnail and the title, if those are interesting enough to click on, then I'll build the videos kind of around that idea. So then that way, because if it's not a strong enough idea that I can convey to you in a title, then
Yep.
it's might not be a good video that people will want to watch long term. So
Yep. Okay. And so you start with the thumbnail and the title from an idea. Do you like time block 2 hours a week to try and come up with ideas, or is it just like you're walking down the street one day and it hits you? What does your idea figuring process look like?
I would say it varies. Like it
Okay.
goes from, like one idea, the Hunter Biden one idea was literally came to us driving from Thanksgiving from my parents' house back. My son was talking about changing his phone title, like the name of his phone to nuclear remote or something like that. And I just, Hunter Biden's laptop has been all over the news, and I was like, how funny would it be to receive a airdrop and it said from Hunter Biden's laptop? And then I built this kind of whole story around it, and it even has, like, if you watch the end of it,
Yep.
it has a little fictional piece that will play into this. I had said this series of other kind of fictional storylines, but it it just started from that little simple thing that my son said to this now idea that has just kind of continuously grown. I work so much that my mind is just, it doesn't shut off. So like I'm constantly thinking about the videos and coming up with ideas. Over the weekend, I was filming with somebody, and his fiance was saying, like, Jusup doesn't hang out with anybody. Like, no, you might think you're hanging out with Jusup, but you're working. Like, there is working. He doesn't hang out. You just don't. And that's so true. Like, I'm constantly have a camera. I'm thinking of doing things. I'm trying to capitalize everything. It might be a downfall. I think I may need to like take time to really just play for the sake of playing sometimes, but I don't know, man. I'm hungry. I've been putting a lot of energy. I took a year and a half off of creating, and was building a business with my cousins and some other partners. And I ended up leaving that a few months ago so that I could go back to focusing on building this YouTube channel. And I feel like I'm starting from scratch, but it is I just know this is what I want to put my energy into. And because I want to make it work so bad, like I'm willing to work every second.
That's cool.
Gonna make it work regardless.
Okay. Yeah, because you were living here in Montana, and then you moved to Florida, and you were doing stuff with a custom car shop or something that.
Have you heard of West Coast Customs?
I have, yep.
So yeah, West Coast Customs they're the ones who were behind the Pimp My Ride TV show on MTV years ago, and they're just a pretty big brand. They have a Netflix series called Inside West Coast Customs, where they've done customizations for a ton of celebrities' cars, like lots of Justin Bieber, Post Malone, Paris Hilton. Tons. Shaq has had several, so lots. And what we did is we started this company. It was a Web3 based company where we were building a video game, and we were partnered with West Coast Customs. So our company was called Neverland Studios. It still exists. It's I just stepped down, and they're still building and getting closer and closer, and I still talk to them. And basically, what happened is. Keep getting.
Is that the timer or the?
No, it's calls.
Okay.
My dog is having surgery tomorrow, and I think it was. It said the vet, but so basically we started this company, and it's a Web3 based company, which means like we're building a blockchain video game. So it's a video game that is on the blockchain, and every time you win a race or every time you customize a car, so each vehicle is an NFT where then you can adjust and change that, and it's registered and saved on the blockchain. So thinking like existing games, Fortnite, for example. So a skin within Fortnite would be considered an NFT that you could own. If you could customize that NFT or that skin, then all of that data would be changed and registered on the blockchain. So you would own your actual digital assets. And that's kind of what we were building. And there was a ton of potential in it. Obviously with any bootstrapping company, at the beginning, we were just all paying ourselves really, really like nothing. I mean, it was the most I worked for an entire year with taking the least amount I've ever done. And it was a ton of grinding, but I got to meet so many different people. Like I was in Twitter spaces with people like Logan Paul, talking to Blau, talking to huge people that it was crazy. We hosted an event that had celebrities at it. I mean, like, so many things were happening so fast. And then I even started another podcast that was all based on Web3 called the Alpha Podcast. And I was talking to some of the top people in this industry and cryptocurrency, and like the guy who founded or created Ethereum, Gavin Wood. I got to interview him. I was traveling the world. Things were moving really fast, but I wasn't making a ton because we were just kept reinvesting into the business and kept growing. And then I also like put YouTube completely on the back burner, and it was like starting to eat at me quite a bit. And so I know that this is what I want to do, is I want to create. And even though like the podcasts were a good, that kept me floating because I could still create stuff, it still just didn't scratch that itch. We eventually got funded, and we were valued at $35 million.
Nice. Not bad.
So it was growing. Like, I mean, that's with a year and a little, like a year and a half of working and busting. I mean, like literally, I was traveling to, when I say around the world, I went to Portugal, Bahamas, Argentina, Amsterdam. Like, I was going to different conferences, networking with VCs, and because we were fundraising, I was talking with like billionaires, and it was crazy. And the amount of stuff that I learned was really powerful. Again, it just was not scratching that itch. And I ended up leaving just a few months later, which means I didn't get to reap the benefits of all this labor. But just something inside of me was like, yeah, I know this is what I need to do, is build YouTube and build my channel and what I want to do. And so who would have known that I would have also a month later gotten injured and almost dying. So
yeah. And we're going to shift into that here in a little bit. But what, I love what you said there. You said that you got to do all these things and you got to learn a ton, even though you weren't necessarily making a bunch of money. And I relate to that a lot because a book that changed my life is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. When I read it, I think I was 19 or 20 years old. And the month before I read it, I had moved out on my own for the first time, and I was negative $200 in my bank account, before I put food in my mouth or gas in my truck. Read that book, and one of the concepts that still to this day has resonated with me is you can get a job for what you learn or for what you earn. And so, no, you weren't necessarily making a ton of money, but I guarantee you learned so much in that time that you're now able to translate over to here into your YouTube channel. What would you say would be like the number one or two things that you learned from there as your transition back into full-time YouTube?
Yeah, one of the biggest thing is not overvaluing money. And I mean, I say that in a way of like more of not putting it on a pedestal that is scary. So I think a lot of people, and I've been a victim of it in the past, but even when you're starting out as a freelancer or coming up with ways to value yourself, you overvalue money and the way that people spend it. And I think like I was around people who were blowing money on nonsense. I mean, we're talking about like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars going to bottles and tables and stupid things that don't matter. But it was just crazy how I could be in also interviews, or not interviews, but pitches, talking about like, value. When we originally did it, like I pitched to them that we were valued at $100 million. Like, what? Like, how did we get there? And it was just to points where I'm negotiating what our valuation is and talking about millions of dollars that it was changing the framework of which I saw money and being able to negotiate with those large numbers. And it added a different type of confidence and knowing that like, I think you don't get anything unless you ask for it. And if you're super timid and you're afraid to ask for what you think you're worth, definitely nobody's going to ever give it to you. And
Yeah.
I think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned was like not to overvalue money in the sense of I know it's abundant. I know people have it. I know um, how to value myself and how to sell without feeling like if we were to go into a pitch and I was afraid or even reserved on telling you why I thought that you should invest in me, you're instantly not going to want to do that.
Yep.
If I'm a little bit not necessarily cocky, but confident in like, well, if you the dynamic will change because you're going to sense like, okay, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about, or he believes in it so much that like I'm more comfortable in investing because like he has a vision and
Yep.
me and the team like we worked on pitch decks and we just kept growing to build that confidence so we knew what we were talking about, knew what like I started to assess other companies and how they uh, valued themselves, and it was just like now I could go into these conversations and not be afraid of somebody to say no, which then made me the power, the dynamic shift to me
Yep.
because it's like, well, I'm not afraid of you saying no, so either you want in or you want out, and yeah, so
Yeah. Thank you. Next.
yeah.
That's cool.
But also still being respectful. Like obviously
sure.
we're asking for a lot of money, so there is a value in being respectful that like, yeah, whatever concerns, but I wasn't going in afraid of a no. It was like, how do we figure out if this is best for us both? And starting to look at like, I mean, we had people that did want to give us money, and it was to a point where like, not all money is the same. Like I want somebody in anything I'm doing, I want somebody who believes in what I'm building, wants to work with us and grow. Like not all money is the same. And I think that is the most valuable, another valuable thing that I've learned is like, you don't just take money for the sake of taking money. Because it can come with stipulations. It can come with bad energy, and these people that you brought it might continuously bring different problems that you're not even aware of. And I just think that it's really important to have the right partners and the right people that are complementing what it is you're building and what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that can be expanded to various different ways of life. So
Yeah. I agree with you a ton because when I mean, growing up in South Dakota, I never in my life would have thought I would have made it to the point in the snowmobiling industry that I did, being sponsored by several different companies. And one of the first companies that I worked with, I had a relationship in it, and I rode for like a season with some products that they had, and I did not believe in it. And so how can I, right, sell or encourage other people to buy that, which is what somebody who's sponsoring you wants you to do? I was like, hey, I can't do this. And I had to find another route to go to fulfill, the need that I had.
yeah,
And so I totally agree with you there.
it pushes against your values too. And I
Yep.
think like if you don't have a strong value system, then why would I even want to trust you to purchase? If you're that's what an influencer is, right? Like we think this idea of, oh, I'm going to be an influencer and push this brand and sell this and that, and it's like, yeah, but if nobody trusts anything you say because you're just shilling and throwing out anything and everything, and like, then nobody is going to care. You're not valuable to the people who are watching you. You're not valuable to the brand that's giving you money. Like, build trust. Like, believe in what it is you're doing, and yeah, I mean, just set a strong value system. That's probably the most important thing. And then test everything against that value system. If you don't have that then there's no clarity on the choices that you can make because you don't have that value system to test against.
Yep, absolutely. And the other thing I like that you said there is, being respectful in it, because with the money, shoot for the stars and land on the moon. I mean, a few months after you left is worth $35 million. You're at still a lot of money, right? Yeah. And however,
it was valued that before.
Okay.
So I was aware of what I was walking away from.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is the individuals who you were meeting with, their time is valuable. And so just the fact that they gave you their time to hear your pitch, there's merit in that.
Totally.
And now, like is when you blow up and you are the third watched most YouTube channel, and be like, I saw that Jusup guy, right?
Exactly.
So maybe they can help you down the road on some YouTube stuff.
Well, and I mean, it's so one of my biggest value systems, something that I would almost call it like a mission in general, is to leave people better than I find them. And that comes with everything, even going to the grocery store. Like if I come up to a cashier and I want my interaction with them to be they're a little bit happier, they smile, like anything, whether we do a business together, I want to make sure that I provide enough value that when I leave, if I'm in a relationship, I want to make sure that if whatever it is, my ultimate goal is to leave things better than I find them or that I meet them at. And that's where it comes with like giving value, is constantly checking, am I making sure that's my mission, and am I sitting and acting within that mission? Obviously there's going to be problems and there's things that don't happen that way, but it's constantly having that goal, and that's my mission in life. Then I can always check myself to make sure that I am moving in that direction. And again, there's going to be people that come into your life that don't align with that and test you in certain ways. And your goal is to make sure that you follow your value system as close as possible, and that you have developed those things for yourself. Like it's just as important to have a mission statement for yourself as it is for your business. I see a lot of people having businesses that don't even have a mission statement. Like, what are you building?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that you say that, because we weren't talking about this beforehand, but so earlier this year, I set a personal mission statement for myself. And so now exactly what you said is every night when I go to bed, I can look in the mirror and say, Taylor, against my mission statement, did I encourage and inspire others to grow towards the potential that God put within them? And if I did that, I know it was a good day, whether I'm tired or fulfilled, or I only made one person smile, or whatever it is. Like, life just gets easier and you get more fulfilled and have more purpose, and it's easier to be intentional with your time.
Yeah, which is, I think so many people are just existing and they don't know, they're just functioning based off of what is happening in life, and there is no purpose, like you said. And so when you have that mission statement, you're making choices very intentionally, strategically, and every decision can be checked against that.
Yep, absolutely. And it makes me think too, what you're saying is like when things don't always go that way and you go through hard times, whether that's interacting with a certain individual who might not be the easiest to interact with, or something personal that's going on. And so I don't want to jump ahead, because I do have another question on the YouTube stuff. So you mentioned Mr. Beast, and before you left you bounced to Florida from Montana, you had some billboards down where Mr. Beast lived. Those videos multiple of them got over 100,000 views. Did you ever get a call from anybody yet, or how has that played out?
I'm just going to say, watch the videos, because it's going to come, that will all be explained very soon in a very fun, creative way.
Okay. And that isn't a shameless plug. Like, for those of you listening or watching on YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening to it, check out his YouTube channel, because I don't say it lightly when Jusup is one of the best video editors you'll ever see. Like, it's so fun, all the different things, especially when you understand editing a little bit, how great of a storyteller you are, along with your creative aspect. So I've always appreciated that about you.
Let's hope that is what everybody starts to appreciate. And I'm the third most watched here shortly. A little intermission. That's where you put the sponsor.
Yeah.
This video is sponsored by Harris Group.
Yeah. In our they sponsored us a studio. So we were talking about mission and stuff like that, and I do want to transition, because there's some stuff you've been battling through recently, and I want to know more about that. But before we do that, sticking with the YouTube, you've been reaching out to Mr. Beast, who I was watching a YouTube video of him yesterday morning, and it was awesome. How has that been going so far? Like, have you got a hold of him? Has he called you?
So yeah, in 2020, early 2021, actually. I put up a couple billboards to get his attention, like kind of right outside near his home and stuff like that. And to answer that question, you'll just have to go watch the YouTube videos because those coming episodes will actually tie in with what I was talking about with the new content that is coming. So like the Beast Burger in Paradise. I'll give you some hints. Like I took over a restaurant and a lot of Key West and turned it into like opening my own Beast Burger, and we rented go-karts or these carts and drove around dressed and did like a Mario Kart through Key West. So that's another episode. I took over Mr. Beast City and did a scavenger hunt. So these are just a few things that will play into that actual series and episodes.
Okay, that's super cool. And for those of you listening, and if you're watching over on YouTube, that's not like a shameless, selfish plug. Jusup's videos are phenomenal. He is so creative. He's very, very good at storytelling. His editing is amazing. And so I would encourage you, definitely go watch that, the Mr. Beast stuff that he's did a few months ago, or I guess over a year now.
So it's been... it was filmed in 2021, and all of it got put on the back burner because I was building that business with my cousins, and that's kind of like it just was constantly eating at me. I mean, I spent like 35 grand to film all of that stuff, and so it's just been sitting on hard drives that I can't wait to share. So
okay, that's super cool. I'll definitely be watching it. I'll put a link to your YouTube channel in the show notes. And
cool.
And stuff like that.
It's super easy. Jusup 11 on literally everything. So
sweet. I dig it. So now transitioning a little bit on coming with the mission and stuff, because the mission is what keeps us going, especially when things are hard. Like a couple YouTube videos ago, you were running a 100-mile race, an ultra marathon. And so the first question is, what even got you in to not only running, but running on purpose? Like I run sometimes, but not on purpose. And like after a mile, I'm like, all right, that's good. But you keep going for big distances. What got you into running?
So I don't know, like we can, I guess, go back quite a bit. In 2014, I was hit by a snowmobile, and I was put in a wheelchair because I had broken bones, torn ligaments in both knees. I've had surgery on both knees. It was like, it just was one of the most difficult things I've had to go through as also a single parent. And I did have a girlfriend at that time who I'm insanely grateful for, because she helped get through that whole thing. But it was, a couple months in a wheelchair, really learning how to walk and work with PT for several years, and I gained like an insane amount of weight. Wouldn't even recognize me when you see those photos. And it was kind of a transitional period though, after that like I started to kind of have a ton of accountability, and started putting it's like I hit rock bottom, and that was the catalyst for me to get control of my life. And so that's when a whole bunch of different things started spiraling, as far as like learning what is it that I started losing a ton of weight. I started learning to meditate. I was taking like my daily, what I was being prescribed was 6 10-milligram hydrocodones every single day.
Whoa.
And that was just my prescription. That's what they were giving me. I wasn't abusing it. I was taking what they were giving me. Because I also had, like most of my life, I've had some pretty bad degenerative discs. And so between that and being hit by the snowmobile, I almost felt like I would tell you that I would get sick all the time, and like I could be like, if I think about getting sick, I'll get sick. Like I was a not healthy person, and I started reading more, and I started getting things changed within myself, and my life started to transform really, really quickly. It was insane how much my life would change. And one of the things that like kind of always played in my head is like I didn't think I was going to be able to do normal stuff again because I had surgery on both knees. I like, well, I mean, again, I was massive human being,
Yeah.
and so then I ran a little bit, nothing crazy. I didn't really enjoy running. It wasn't like the most fun. I think the most I'd ever ran was like 5 miles, and then I ended up when I was in Florida. So I also had mentioned I've been a single father, and I've had actually full custody of my son as as a single parent.
Yep.
So which is unusual in today's society. Like there's not
Very
a lot of
much.
single dads. So I was me and that girlfriend at the time that helped me get through the snowmobile accident and stuff. And I say snowmobile accident, somebody hit me. So I was standing there next to
Yeah.
a snowmobile. The guy started the snowmobile with his thumb completely pressed on the gas, and it took off and pinned me between the snowmobile that I was standing next to. So it wasn't
Yeah.
even a fun story.
No, man.
I know. And so I have raised my son this whole time. It's been me and him, and he's become like we've have a pretty close relationship. He's my buddy now, and
Yeah.
we do have a very unique relationship. But when we went down to Florida, I didn't really necessarily want to pull him from his school up here, and then him and his mom. We decided that he would stay with her so that he can build a relationship with his mom. So just trying to give her them that opportunity as well. And I knew it was going to be really, really hard on me. So it was September of 2021. I set a goal to run a minimum of 2 miles every single day. I originally set that goal to be through the rest of the year, and I knew it. I didn't hate, but I just didn't like running. So my goal was like, if I can build a discipline around something that I don't like, then that's going to be the best thing I can do. Is like, how do I do something every single day, no matter what, without fail, and do it that I enjoy. It's not like, let me go do this.
Yeah.
And 2 miles is the like threshold of like when you're running a long distance, 2 miles is where you just finally fall into the groove. So it's the worst beginning of any run anyway. And I found it to be uh, a good amount. And that was doing all of that while I was working with my cousins. I was traveling the world, all those countries I named. Like I ran every single day. After a 22-hour flight, after I would just get it right in between. I did everything to make that happen. And then once I completed the rest of the year, I was like, let's go 365 days. And then, obviously I just kept progressing. And then I had a buddy who, his brother did a ton of ultra marathons, and he's done like 250-mile races. He's raced with Goggins. He's just done a lot of crazy stuff. And my childhood best friend, Will, they also have a YouTube channel called Lost Compass, which has a lot of these races on it. He was signing up for his second 100-mile race, and he failed at the first one. And so this was supposed to be the second one. And I decided I'm going to sign up with him and train and get to go do that with him. And little did I know. So as I was progressively getting more and more into running and learning more. Like I didn't know what I was doing when I first started. I was running in Pumas from Costco, and now I've learned quite a bit. And so we signed up for the race. I signed up January, beginning of 2022, beginning of this year.
Yep.
And then the race was in September. And I ended up August 28th, I out of nowhere started to get this severe pain in my spine. And I thought that, it was our peak week. I was doing the most running I've ever done. I mean, we're talking like 5 to 6 hours of running every day, back to back. We're 85-mile weeks, and we were at peak week. And I started stretching more and doing yoga, and I thought maybe I pulled a muscle because I just started getting this really bad pain in my back. And I did some physical therapy over telephysical therapy. I ended up finally I was like, I'm going to go to the ER because I want to make sure that it's not something severe. We're talking about 5 days before the race. And
Great timing.
yeah. And so I'm like, I need to make sure that I'm not going to do long-term damage. Like there's not a fracture or something crazy. So I went to the ER and I was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I was training in Coeur d'Alene with Will, and I'd been there for like 3 weeks up until that point. And so I go to the Coeur d'Alene ER, and they did a CT scan. They wouldn't do an MRI because like unless they're about to do surgery or it seems like it's an immediate thing, they usually don't order MRIs out of ERs. You have to get put on a schedule to get an MRI because there's such a list, like it'll boot somebody else.
Yep.
And they didn't see anything on the CT scan, so there was no fractures. And then the ER doc had just said, like, with all the training you have been doing, I would still do the race. Like, you shouldn't do long-term damage because there isn't a fracture. Like, that would be the biggest concern that he could think of. And turns out it was wrong. Well, there was no fractures. It was not the
right on that.
Yeah. So he's correct in that, and his complete assumption based off of everything I told him and every diagnostic tool that he had at that moment that he did, that was a fair assessment for sure. Yep. And so with that knowledge, I was like, okay, I'm gonna attempt it. Might as well give it a shot. I've been planning for this for almost 9 months or something. So I did the race, and one of the biggest problems that came from that was that whole like 11 days from when I first injured my back to going, I wasn't running or training at all or moving. So I went from 85-mile weeks to nothing, which then every bit of my body tightened.
Oh, yeah.
So not only was I dealing with like back spasming and muscle issues, my body was just like my lower legs and my knees, they were so tight, like everything was just shutting down and not functioning correctly. And ultimately, like if you want to go watch, there's a whole YouTube video about the whole thing. We filmed it, and the story. I guess one thing that was interesting about it was like I feel like I signed up for that race to build confidence and to build to build self-confidence. Like, you know, doing these crazy hard things, it adds to, my buddy used an analogy, Anthony, of it's like building armor. You know, every time you do something that is hard and challenging, you're building this confidence that nobody else can take away from you because you know what you're putting yourself through. You know what all the hard things. When you do that, like other people's validation and opinions don't even matter because you have continuously built this armor and these things that give you strength based off of tasks that you know push you. Yeah. And I went into it thinking that was what I was doing it. And ironically, one interesting thing that I got out of it that I never possibly could expect was, so right off the bat, I was hurting way more than I should have been. Like I had done miles. I was like 15 miles in and I was falling apart. And but physically, emotionally, like I was falling apart. And I mean, in training, we were doing 25-mile days and then the next day doing 15. So
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, when I'm at like 15 and feel like I'm falling apart, I was like, oh, this is bad. And I had thought that I had I had already been cut. And so I was like still trying to push. And once I got to the first aid station, it was technically the second aid station, but it was where I could meet my crew, and which was my parents and Kenzie, which is Will's partner, and his family. Like they were all helping crew us.
And how far into the race is that?
22 miles.
20. So you've almost ran a marathon.
Yeah.
At this point.
So 22 miles. I get there and like, in my head, I thought I was bawling. Like I literally thought I was crying, and I look at the footage and I wasn't, which is crazier. And so I I see them and everything, and they're like, "You didn't." I thought I had missed the cutoff, and they're like, "Nope, you didn't miss the cutoff. Like you're good by 13 minutes."
Oh,
And so one thing about myself is I've learned that my love language is acts of service,
hmm,
and when I like sat down, they were taking care of me completely. And I felt at my literal lowest point because I was out of energy. My body was shutting down. I was hurting. And like Kenzie's taking my shoes off, cleaning my feet with wipes, like literally it was just straight acts of service. They were taking care of me and I didn't feel like I was giving anything.
yeah,
And after like that, I kept going. Like even when you watch the video, you're kind of like, there's no way he's done. And then
yeah,
here I am like, all right, cool, let's keep going. And because one of the things that we had set a goal that there is no quitting. You get cut or like you can't go on. You don't
yeah,
quit. If you
yeah,
have the opportunity to keep going, you go.
yep,
And so that was one of the stipulations. And so I was like, all right, if I didn't miss the cutoff, I'm gonna keep going. And I remember the next like half mile, I was actually crying, and that's in the video. But
yeah,
it was more joy because like I didn't think I could get love out of doing something crazy and so like physically suffering. You look at it as like, oh, this is going to build strength and build this, and I got love out of it.
yeah,
And I think what is really funny is, God, universe, whatever anybody wants to call it, I think like that was what I was meant to get out of that, and I couldn't have planned for that. And that's what when I reflect on it, like I ended up getting cut, but I still had to walk out of there. I was still like literally dragging myself along. And I had a lot of time to reflect on that. And it was like, I learned, or I got something that I was supposed to, not what I showed up to thinking I was going to get. And little did I know, though, the strength and stuff was going to become later because my back still progressively got worse and worse. And I was having a lot of neurological symptoms. Like I was sweating excessively at night to the point where like my pillows were absolutely soaked. And it just kept getting worse. And then there was blood in my urine and the pain got to be so debilitating that I had to get here to Bozeman, where I have family, and then ended up going to the ER. And they did some blood tests, and they checked my urine, and they found a little bit of blood, but no stones or anything. And so they scheduled an MRI, and a week later, I go to have the MRI done, and like 30 minutes after the MRI, I get a call, and it's like, we found some concerning images or findings, like you need to get to the ER immediately.
yeah.
And it turns out that I was diagnosed with what's called discitis vertebral osteomyelitis. And
Okay. That big name.
yeah. Basically what that means.
Yes, in English, please.
Yeah. So there was an infection in the disc and the vertebrae in my spine. And we don't know what the infection was because we couldn't get a culture to grow. And then I had to have a biopsy, and we couldn't get that to grow as well, which means that it was incredibly isolated. And I think that my really good health going into all of this is probably what saved my life, because it's a fatal, if it's not treated immediately, it can be very fatal. And one big issue is like it's right next to your spine and your nervous system. So once if the infection gets into your nervous system, it can wreak havoc in ways that like are really bad.
Yeah.
And then it weakens the bones and the discs, and then your spinal collapse, and you can end up paralyzed. So like one of the orthopedic surgeons was like, you're really lucky that you're not paralyzed.
Yeah.
And they ended up having to put a PICC line in my arm, which is basically a semi-permanent IV. So,
Okay.
and then I was on daily antibiotics. I had to give myself IV antibiotics every single day for 6 weeks.
Really?
And what I think is like
Did it stay in there like the whole all day, every day?
yeah, so
And do you just tape it or?
yeah, so go, and I can show you the hole that's just healing
Yeah,
still. Yeah, I mean, this was not even that long ago.
I know.
So, yeah, basically they weren't able to grow any cultures. And my theory in talking with the infectious disease, because I had several doctors working on this from ortho, infectious disease, primary care, a lot of different doctors helping me. But basically, I think because I was so healthy, I was eating really good, I was exercising every day. My cardiovascular, my resting heart rate was like 38.
Wow.
And I think that was from running every single day.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
But what happened is I think the white blood cells in my body were fighting whatever infection it was, because it could have came in from my foot, it could have came in from open wound somewhere. Like one of the theories was I had dry needling done, which that could potentially be it.
Yep.
And I think it was so hard for them to catch this initially, like when I was at the hospital in Coeur d'Alene, because I don't fit the bill of somebody that gets osteomyelitis. Like it's
No.
usually somebody who is like an IV drug user,
Yep.
that is injecting things. It's diabetics, people who have had open surgeries. Those are the type of people that usually end up with something like this. So this was not even on their radar, and especially as healthy as I was. And I think that's, again, though, what saved my life in the sense of it found the weakest point in my body, which is my spine, where I have those degenerative discs. It found the worst degenerative discs, and it stayed there. And naturally, you and I, our bodies, just our spine in general, and particularly the L1 and L2 areas, don't see a lot of circulation, so you don't get a lot of white blood cells in that area. So not only did it find my weakest point in my entire body, but then it also had a lack of white blood cells that were fighting that infection, and those white blood cells fought it everywhere else in my body, in the blood and even on that spine, just not in that section. And I think that's why it could have been so much worse if I wasn't in the shape and as healthy as I was.
Yeah.
And yeah, so ultimately I had this PICC line that goes into my arm all the way to my heart. And the reason that is so that when you give yourself antibiotics, that your heart just immediately starts pumping those antibiotics, and that's how you can get it to that area in your spine, because you just get poor circulation in general there. And so every day I was in a back brace because they didn't want my spine to collapse. And yeah, man, it was like going from running every single day and doing insane stuff. I mean, I ran the Bridgers one night, like
Just casually ran the Bridgers
from the M to Fairy Lake, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't live here in Bozeman, like that's really, how far is that?
It's actually only 20 miles, but it's 20 miles and
Up and down mountain,
yeah,
huge
it's
mountain,
like
multiple peaks.
9,000-ish, I think.
That's insane.
So yeah, I mean, like I did that, and then I've done so many things, and then it was like immediately hard stop.
Yep.
But the craziest part about this whole thing is like this week I'm running 25 miles. Last week, so I signed up for another 100-mile race February 4th.
How long after the injury
Will it be?
Yeah.
Well, like 3 months from when they pulled my PICC line.
Wow.
And that there's none of the doctors think I'm capable of that anybody's really capable of doing something like this. I asked him, I was like, when do you think the ortho, I was like, when do you think the next time I'll be able to run 100 miles is? And he goes, probably not for another year. Like, you're going to be dealing with symptoms for a year. And yeah, I was like, well, I signed up for 103 months. So yeah, I mean, I'm towing the line of pushing myself as far as I can possibly go, while also being conscientious of my body, listening to my body. I think, modern medicine is set up to treat and meet the average, and the average is not like what the capabilities are higher than than just the average. So I think there is a lot of room for me I'm very active in my recovery. So there is room for me to push those limits within a safe distance. It was it's a hell of a few months.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. I think this was different from the last time I had to recover, because I really feel like this one I had to do alone. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. I had a girlfriend at the time then. I don't now. And so like this one I really had to do on my own. And then I also approached it very differently, in the sense of like I didn't gain a ton of weight. I still did everything I can. On ketogenic diet. I was, like I was saying, very, very active in my recovery so that I could avoid. I'm doing more running now than the average person does, and I'm still technically recovering.
Yeah.
So I did like a 2 mile. I call them runs, but they're more of jogs. They're very slow because I'm trying to stay within 140 BPM. But
heart rate.
Yeah. And so they're slow, but I was doing, like, with the PICC line in my arm, I was doing 2 miles, and I was walking with the back brace. I was doing, like I said, I was pushing the limits of what the doctor said I could and couldn't do. Just because I wanted to make sure that I got through it as easy as possible. And of course there was moments of like depression, and it beat me down. I was dealing with also neurological symptoms. Like it was affecting my nervous system. And so immediately, like when it happened, I called my therapist that I hadn't seen in like 4 years and got therapy scheduled so that it was like, how do I avoid any pitfalls? Like, what is the best way that I can make sure that I get through this as easy as possible? And I say easy as possible. It was a lot of work to do all of these things, but it was, I had to I had to be active in order to make sure that I didn't fall into severe depression. I didn't fall into severe weight or lose all of the athleticism that I built for the last year. So it wasn't easy, but I feel like I got through it better than most people would. And I also learned a ton just in that amount, that like even just the amount of gratitude that comes from that. And now I'm doing things and implementing, like trying every time I eat to say grace, like doing so many things that I can take from that, where I'm like so grateful for the little things that I can apply and continue to use in life without having to be injured or hurting. And I think those are really important, and I want to make sure that I carry that with me.
Yeah, that's super cool. And so you're practicing a lot of gratitude. Well, come to that. How often are you like meeting with are they continuing to check up on you, or is it like
the doctors?
You're good. Yeah.
So we're pretty much good right now.
Okay.
Like it was obviously like very, very, every week I had blood drawn. It was very close at first. Now I'm at a point, I think it was like a couple weeks ago. It was my right after Thanksgiving was my last like doses of antibiotics. And so, I mean, that's like 2 weeks, I think. 2 or 3 weeks. And now it's just, if anything, if I get any severe pain, then I need to reach out to them, because that's the only way that they can kind of gauge it. They could do more blood tests, and they'll check what's called your CRP, and that shows inflammation. But if they do another MRI, most likely months after that you have an infection like this, they'll still come back abnormal. So it's now just they're trusting and me trusting myself, listening to my body and the pain, while also still doing things. Like I'm running a lot. This week I have my biggest run will be a 12-mile run. And like that's pushing it. That's like that's
I couldn't do that right now.
it's
Probably. I mean, I could, but I would hate life.
so and yeah, so it's inevitable that I'm gonna have a little bit of pain. So I
Yeah.
have to be super conscientious of paying attention to that and not pushing it to where it's masking if like something is coming back. I need to be able to be aware of that. So
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'm sure you were telling the doctors like, "Hey, I'm doing it in February. Here's what I'm doing." Like, what were their reactions?
just like what? Yeah, I mean they think I'm crazy, but
Yeah.
I mean I told them like they're able to see. That's the thing is like it's very easy to see also a response from my blood and how things are how I'm able to bounce back
Yeah.
quickly. So it was easy for them to see that. I did have a lot of negative reactions to the antibiotics I was taking.
Yeah.
I don't take anything like I almost never have take ibuprofen, Tylenol. Like I take hardly anything, and I don't drink. So my like going from that to now, I was taking so many drugs just to keep me alive and fighting the infections. So my body just it was not happy with all that. So
No.
like now I'm on a lot of probiotics. I'm taking a bunch of different types of mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail, and then I have prebiotics, probiotics. I'm taking the AG1 that you hear sponsoring every podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And eating keto. I'm eating very, very healthy, doing ice baths. We did a cold plunge in the river, like, and when I say the river, like the coldest the water can possibly get.
Which river?
It was the Madison.
The Madison? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But Three Forks, where it crosses at Three Forks, because yeah, that was just a good entry point. But which I just want to say I'm going to be coordinating a group polar plunge in the river this weekend that hopefully you can be at.
What day?
I think we're aiming for Sunday.
Okay. Definitely keep me posted.
'Kay.
We'll be in touch. I've never done it in a river. Like, yeah, I've not done it in moving water.
If you're in Bozeman area and you want to push yourself or do something that will definitely push you, it'll be nice because you'll be around other people who are being pushed as well. And so you'll get a little bit of the peer pressure. But this weekend, more than likely Sunday, all you have to do is DM me at Jusup11.
Yeah.
But come do the polar plunge with everybody. And we'll also learn some breathing techniques to help us get there. I did want to, speaking of polar plunges and stuff like that, so you actually did one this morning.
I did.
And one of the things that you talked about, which is interesting, and I think why most people do polar plunge, but you had said that you didn't want to talk in the video because you didn't want to end up shivering.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I did.
So what's interesting about that is there's actually major benefits from allowing yourself to shiver. And
really?
So there's multiple reasons why you should do polar plunges or cold submersion. And the method that you're doing helps with other things.
Okay.
So basically, like what you're trying to do is very positive. So by controlling yourself, you're getting control of your nervous system. You're dictating the different chemical releases. It helps build like resilience in the sense of you're able to get control of like these chemical responses that are happening. So then that helps you take it outside of the cold plunge in your normal day, where you can now have more control over your chemical responses when just normal things happen to you.
Yeah.
Then you're increasing your baseline dopamine. So normally, one thing that's very interesting, like dopamine, a lot of people look at dopamine as a bad thing, but dopamine is actually really, really positive, and it's essential because it's the motivational chemical. So like if you lack dopamine, then you're going to not pursue anything.
Yep.
And so it's super important to have dopamine and you want to control it. But the issue that we have nowadays is that we're getting a lot of dopamine on very low effort things. So we're getting these dopamine hits with low effort, and now we're wiring that behavior. So then when anything that has real effort comes into our lives, we're going, I don't want to do that because let me go eat some food or take these drugs or
scroll on TikTok or Instagram. Yeah.
And I mean, even like masturbation has been very traumatizing
Horrible.
for kids because, or just young males, and not even young males. Like I know a lot of people my age that's a problem because it's just a quick dopamine hit. It's just so easy. And then you add porn, like all of these things are super low effort, high dopamine, and we're wiring that behavior over and over and over. And so what cold exposure does, it will actually increase your dopamine without the drop. So when you get those big hits on other things, like if you take meth or cocaine, you get this high hit of dopamine, but then you drop equal amount below your baseline. So you're falling even further. And now you're at a behavior of like, I need to get this back up. And you're just this constant, like trying to get that dopamine hit. And it's, if you've ever taken Adderall or taken any type of stimulation, you're getting this huge dopamine hit and then it's impossible to get that again.
Yeah.
And so you're getting this high and then it's an immediate crash below your baseline. With cold exposure, it actually gives you the same amount of dopamine as like cocaine, but you have a gradual decrease after it that lasts much longer, and then you don't go below your baseline.
Really?
So doing that, you're getting this cocaine high, great feeling that lasts way longer and much healthier. You're raising your baseline dopamine. You're not just high hit, really, really low. And now people are chasing and filling that void with other bad habits.
Yeah.
And so that's one major reason. Now, saying all of that, also like you have your it helps with your immune system. There's several other things that it can help. You release a bunch of norepinephrine. When you allow yourself to shiver. So Dr. Huberman talks about this, and are you familiar with?
Yeah, so I just started ice bathing, man, like a week and a half ago now. I just picked it up, and I've been watching pretty much Andrew Huberman and Wim Hof are like the two kind of OGs, and then there's lots of other people in the entrepreneurial and athletic space that are
Obviously,
into it. So so just recently into it.
If you allow yourself to shiver, it actually releases what's called succinate, and it's a chemical in your body that is really good for fat loss and fat burning. And it comes specifically from the shivering. So like I've been playing with these cycles, and it gets hard because, if you're going and doing the other method, you get to a point where you're like not shivering. I took a cold shower the other day trying to shiver, and I could not get myself to shiver.
Just chilling, the chilling version. Like just getting in, controlling breath, and hanging out.
Yeah. Okay. So like when you do that, you start to build this adaptation to cold water, and then it makes it really hard to shiver, and you're missing out on those other benefits that you can get.
For the fat loss stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this release of succinate, and like it's funny because like I've been trying to do these cycles where you get in, you get really cold, you shiver, you step out of the shower, and then you just allow your shiver until it goes away, and then you get back in. You don't dry off, you just do these. I did it for like 10 minutes, but then after I've been doing like these cold plunges in the river, like, excuse me, I got the hiccups. The other day I tried to do a cold shower to entice the shivering and stuff, and I couldn't get it to work. I just stood there just like, all right, I don't know what's going on. And I live in where I'm at right now is in the mountains, and it's well water. Like this is cold water. And I could not get it to go.
Really?
Like, I'm getting too adapted. But we also like the house is heated off of wood fire. You've been up there. And so like even at night, my
bedroom
will drop to 56 degrees, which is cold for an inside of a house. And I think it's really making me adapted, which is a good and a bad thing. Like I'm missing out on a lot of good benefits, but yeah, it's kind of crazy how much like my body can control itself in those cold showers now. And like, again, if you want to come to do this polar
Yeah.
plunge, it'll be fun. We'll make a video out of it. And,
Okay. I dig it. Yeah, this episode won't be out by then. However, we'll
I'll
trim this up for
we'll
Instagram.
Just pull this clip real quick.
Okay. I dig it. If it's Sunday, I'll be there. Just keep me posted on the time, and I'll try to get a couple other people to come with too.
Okay, cool. Because there's two people. I was aiming for Sunday or Saturday, but then somebody else said Sunday, and now that you say Sunday, we'll just make it Sunday.
Perfect. Okay. Now, what do you? I'm sure you. How long have you been polar plunging for?
I mean, I've just been playing around with it for like 4 or 5 years when I started hearing about Wim Hof, and yeah, now it's like become very, very popular, and now you're seeing like a lot of the studies that are coming from it. But yeah, I mean, I did cold showers quite a bit a few years ago. You know, I think I started with that, and now polar plunging, like going into the rivers, like this is a little new. Because the one, like there's a clip of it on my Instagram, like a river is different than like even your polar plunge that you have, because
like a trough.
Yeah, a river is moving water means that you can't heat. A lot of times what ends up happening in a still, like you just sitting there, you're going to build a small layer of heat around your body because it's all still. If you have moving water, it's impossible to build that because it's constantly refreshing.
Yeah.
You know? So the cold, the river is like, it's as cold as it'll get. Just letting you know.
It's like that initial, because when my brother came and did it, like he put his foot in and he's like literally, oh, this ain't bad. And then he was like, oh, like a total shock and kind of hyperventilating almost. And it's like when you control your breath in the tub, like I've got a horse trough, it's fine.
Yeah.
But so it's probably like that initial shock, except the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna suck.
Yeah. But but boy, dude, like we'll get the drone out there, and it is just, you're gonna get a huge dopamine hit. So I'm excited.
I dig it. What do you tell people, like when you try to bring them with, or they've never done it before? Like
a lot of people flake out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
most people flake out.
I've been trying to encourage so many different people to do it because, like, especially exactly like you said on the dopamine stuff. Right now in today's day and age, it's like, you know, let's say scrolling through Instagram, you dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine. They all keep coming, and now doing anything else, you can't do it. Or when it comes to working hard, people don't want to work hard anymore. And it's like, because you're ruining your reward system that God gave you with all this artificial stuff. And so like it helps so much with someone who might struggle with anxiety or any self-confidence, whatever, how, I don't know. And I'm kind of rambling here, but I would love to encourage people who have never done it or experienced it so far to just try it once, because so many times I've had people over to come polar plunge in the week and a half that I've had this, and they do it, and right away they don't enjoy it. And after 30 seconds, when you relax, you take that deep breath, it's fine. And then you get out and it's like, this is way better than coffee or whatever. It's amazing.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it goes with running. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, of course, it takes a lot of convincing yourself, because we've ruined ourselves with all of these easy things, that the second there is something hard that we have to do, it's like you have to convince yourself.
Yep.
And, you know, like, I'm not going to lie, even after a year of running every single day, like there's days I do not want to do it.
Yep.
That just happens, man. Like, and especially now, like during this I'm running outside. Every single run I've done has been outside, not on a treadmill. And I'm in the mountains through snow, sometimes at night. I mean, like below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. I assume everybody's in America. Fahrenheit. But yeah, like, but the thing is and I've had people like, man, that sucks. Like, I bet you can't wait to get back to Florida. And yeah, that's true. But the thing is, bro, afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's just, you don't get when you do the hard things, it feels amazing. And then also like changing the way that you approach it. So instead of like, oh man, that sucks, I have to go run in the snow, it's like, oh man, this is a dope opportunity to train in harsh conditions
Yep.
that I didn't get to ever do. So now I get to push myself a little bit more. Just changing that a little bit makes you way more open to like pushing yourself. Way
Yeah.
more. It's also leaning into gratitude, right? Like
Yep.
you're grateful for this opportunity. Just the other day, and on a run, like I didn't necessarily want to go out there, and then like while I'm out there, I just go, man, look at how beautiful everything is.
Yeah.
Like instead of keeping my head down and listening to music and just trying to zone out, like I started lifting my head and paying attention to like how gorgeous is all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get back to Florida and be running in a freaking neighborhood and going, man, I wish I would have appreciated how
Yeah.
I was surrounded with all this nature. I mean, I did a run the other night at 11:30 at night with just the moon as my light.
Really.
Do you know how primal that feels? Do you know how cool that is?
Yeah.
Like, oh man,
Yeah. The grass is always greener.
always.
Yeah. I was sharing that this morning with Kyler, my business partner, that like right now so I rode snowmobile professionally when I was like 19 through 23 years old. And when I first started guiding and bringing people out and stuff, it was a lot of fun. Like I really enjoyed it. And then after a month, because I get all this seat time, then my ability got much higher than the people I was riding with. And then I was just always making excuses, right? Of like, oh, I can't have fun because the snow isn't good, or I was just here yesterday and this is where these people wanted to go, or they can't keep up with me or whatever. And it was all about me. And it just sucked. And I was like, if I, was in my career or something like that. And now I'm in a career that I love so much. And however, I see all my friends who are still in the snowmobiling industry who have only continued to progress in their, the relationships they have, the riding opportunities they get, and all of that. And I'm in my office. Yes, I'm doing what I love and building a career, but they're out having fun in the snow, right? And I just stopped. I was like, Taylor, like if you were doing that again, you would wish you were here. And so just understanding and being able to be grateful in every single moment, it helps so much. And like, so what I did this year for Thanksgiving is I got all this podcast stuff, and I have no clue how to use any of it. I mean, so thank you. Jusup helped a ton with getting this in-person studio set up with 3 cameras and all of that. I can't wait to have it, all on my own. And what I did was I set up my studio and I made a video every day just expressing gratitude for different things that I was grateful for.
Cool.
And I sent a personal message to several different people I was grateful for of like something intentional, not like, hey, Jusup, appreciate you. It was like, hey, I've seen you do this. Like people may have not seen that. I've seen you do this, or this is what I respect about you.
That's cool.
So many of those videos brought like tears to my eyes. And I'm not kidding. A week ago, I was on my way to the gym in the morning because you said running is hard sometimes. So is lifting weights. Like if you're not nervous before you go do something, like you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough.
Yeah.
And I don't remember why, but I was down on myself. And I pulled up one of my gratitude videos that I had sent to someone else. Like it's not even about me. And man, it totally reframed the day. I had an awesome workout and an amazing day. And so I love to hear you talking about gratitude and expressing that, because that's something that, the news is, and everything is so negative and victim all the time.
You want to hear something interesting, and I'll let you finish, but I'll tell you why.
Yeah, I do. What I was just gonna say, like the last thing, like I believe, and this is kind of this is after the fact, but in episode 1, I'm going to be talking about, because this is coming out after episode 1. But I haven't recorded it yet, which is weird. But I'll talk about like what we focus on expands. And if we are focused on negative things and negative thinking all the time, like that's how your life is going to be. And that's a bad way to live. And so that's what I love about you, is like you're always so positive, doing cool and fun things and surrounding yourself with good people. And it's why, like, no, you've not lived here, but it feels like we just hung out a few days ago, like you're a good friend of mine. So I love that you do gratitude.
And I'll say, like, I'm not always positive, when I go through really hard, but
Yeah.
I think it's just the reframing. You can find positivity or positive perspectives within all of it. And, and sometimes like there was a few days when I was going through the sickness just recently, the illness. And, I let myself just be like feel that too. I think it's important to let people know, like, you don't have to, that doesn't mean like suppress if you're feeling like crap or you're actually down or something, like you don't have to suppress that. I think the biggest thing is moving through it, and moving through it comes in different ways, but like actually acknowledging it and actually acknowledging like, okay, why am I looking at this way, or why am I feeling this way? And even having gratitude for feeling that way, in a sense, will help you move through it. So if you are, it's like all of those thoughts and all of those things are put in place as a safety mechanism for us, like fear is a safety mechanism. And so I think it's important not to like look at positive people and go, oh yeah, well, they're just positive all the time, they must not go through anything. And that's not the case at all. I think it's just figuring out how to feel your emotions, work through them, not suppress them, and transform into something that is good and more positive. Because there is silver linings in everything, and the grass is always greener. And if you can build your world in a way that you're grateful for, and like we were sitting around at Thanksgiving, and everybody was answering what they're grateful for, and it's very superficial. And I don't want to say that could be what they're grateful for.
Dismissing it.
Yeah, exactly. But I was just like, I wanted to just switch it up, and I said, I'm grateful for modern plumbing, because like otherwise we would our shit would back up. Literally, like we'd be dealing with shit. But thinking like, you don't even think about that in your regular day.
No.
How many people wake up in the morning and like, man, thank goodness I don't have to take my poop out, or like it's simple flushing.
Walk to the outhouse.
And that was like why I started doing this grace before I eat. It was like, what I do is I start to go backwards and look at the little things of like, okay, if I had this burger, then I'm grateful for this cow, and then the person that processed it, and the food that cow ate, and just going down and breaking all of that down. Not like a lot of people are like, oh, thank you for, this and that. And it's like, I wanted to take the things that I'm eating and look at it as like, wow, man, I'm really grateful for the person who cut this or grew this lettuce, and all the things and the processing that I had to do to cook it, having the heat. Like, you can go down such an insane rabbit hole on gratitude when you really start dissecting. I mean, right now we could be grateful for the fact that somebody developed these microphones, and now the technology, and then you have the technology which is required with the power and the cables, and the fact that we can have 4K images that we can edit and push in and do things like you can fall down a rabbit hole of gratitude when you stop and you start looking and you dive in. Turns out that this camera right here, the power was a little messed up. So it's funny because it's like, I guess this is just something that we could talk about as far as like expectations, because, there's some moments in this podcast where you're like, oh, that was great. You're creating content for a purpose. And, you set this expectation that you want it to go well. And this camera that you're relying on to be able to create really great content for both of us, that we both do. And then it stops working. And a lot of people, I think that shuts them down. Well, and one interesting thing is like, okay, well, this camera is still recording, so there are still ways that we can still figure it out and make it work. But those are the things that I think about, is like, I set expectations, but also roll with the punches. And I don't think I get stuck on the expectations, because we could talk about like vlogs and storytelling in general. Like, when I go to shoot something, I have an idea, I have an expectation, and this could be kind of the roundabout to talking about this 100-mile race. Like, I went into it with an expectation, but if I would have been hung up on that expectation of like, the only thing I have a goal to finish it, then I can miss the story or the message that is, if I'm focused on that, I miss the story and the message that I was meant to have,
Absolutely.
which was, I got love out of that.
Yeah.
I got so much out of that in a different way that if I was so focused on this expectation of it has to go this way, then you're cutting yourself off. You're not being present because you're thinking about the future and you're missing what is happening right here in front of you because you're like, oh, this is how it's supposed to go. And people deal with anxiety and they deal with all these other things because this is what this is the thing that they are focused on. And now you're missing what's the story that's happening right here.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
absolutely. And if they're, again, my personal mission is, and like the mission of this podcast is sharing impactful stories to inspire growth.
Yeah.
And you've done so many cool things with traveling the world, doing businesses, building video games, and your YouTube channel and all that. And if there's two things that people could take from this podcast, I would encourage them to take presence and gratitude, because that's where your anxiety is going to come from, is you're worried about the past the future, or you're worried about the past or having sorrow. And not that that's inherently wrong, but like if you can be present and be grateful that, well, guess what? No, that camera didn't work, but we still have that one, and we're still going to be able to get this out there. We still got to hang out and have a good conversation.
Yeah.
If all of this fails and no one hears it, I got to hang out with Jusup for a while.
Yeah,
and it was still a great afternoon.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty, is like being able to find that, and then things will work out. Like what is meant to be, when you're giving the right energy, what is meant to be will happen, I feel like. And like you said, I think those 2 points, I agree. I totally agree. Like those are very important. And one of the messages that I'm like very adamant about getting out there nowadays is like, there is a lot of suicides. Suicides is one of the number one killers of young males, particularly. And we are doing all these things to try to help them, yet it's failing because it's increasing constantly. And the even crazier thing is it's not being reported very often. Like I hear about people who commit suicide, it's nowhere in the news. It is not even talked about. I've like had a friend or a friend's friend commit suicide and tried to look up any information on it or in the news in both Bozeman. It's happened to Bozeman. It's happened to Coeur d'Alene. It's happening around us, and it's not being reported. It's not being talked about because it's also embarrassing for the family that their child or their loved one or anybody committed suicide. So we're not talking about it. And it's happening all around us, and depression is happening. And I think all of these things that we are talking about in this podcast and these messages are so important, because you do these things, you're building self-soothing tools that will help you get through these moments. And a lot of the messaging that is out there is about relying on somebody else. And I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I'm a huge proponent of social aspects and friendships and stuff like that. But if you don't develop self-soothing tools that can help you get out of that, you put yourself in a very vulnerable state. And I think it's really important that each one of us implements those things and takes accountability. Like it's just as important to have a gratitude practice, or to eat healthy, or to do all of these things when life sucks, when things are not good. That's the most important time to do it. You don't do it when it's very easy to be grateful when things are going well. It's super easy when you have things going well.
Yeah.
And if the most crucial times are doing it when things aren't going well, because you don't get to like, depression isn't predicated. It's not sitting around waiting like, hey, is this a good time?
Yeah, no.
Are you going to feel, you want to feel bad today? Like that's not how depression works. And I think it's very important that we all are creating these self-soothing tools. We're building confidence in ourselves. And instead of people going, you can call me if you're feeling down, make sure you call me. Like 100%. I think it's more important that we reach out to our friends and just constantly check on each other, be better friends.
Yeah.
And, like putting more pressure on somebody that, hey, if you're feeling depressed and want to kill yourself, you call me. Like, or we just have a stronger bond that we're all checking in on each other. And like, I'm the first person to say, I feel like I have a level of narcissism and my focus is very narrow on everything I'm building, but I do a really good job of calling people and checking on people. Like, I have a journal that I write, and I try to make 3 personal calls that day to just different people. You know, because we all are putting all this focus and this control in our business lives, but like, are we putting that same control and assessment on the personal relationships that we have? And I love that you said that you sent these videos out to, and you took the time to personalize them instead of just like, hey, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate, like, that's cool. That's a good start. But like, just really embodying that gratitude of the people or the bond and going, okay, if I even know that a friend is susceptible to depression, then I'm going to be a better friend and make sure to reach out to them. And I know we're all going through our own things. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm depressed and I need to like wait for a convenient time to call you. If I call you because you told me, hey, I'll be there for you, and then you don't because you're out snowmobiling, and it's not any fault of your own that you just don't have service. But now what? I was relying on reaching out to you, and I don't have any other self-soothing tools. Now I'm vulnerable, and my mind is racing, and depression is getting deeper and even more let down because my best friend didn't answer. Like, it is very, very important to build these self-soothing tools, to build internal things that can help you pull yourself out of these moments.
Yeah. And that's why community is so important too. Cause like even my dad called me here recently, and sorry, Dad, I didn't pick up the phone. I could have, but it was almost like I had some other things I needed to do, right? And I can call later. But there's lots of people who they thought they could call later or do something, and then they can't, right? And so, if you're somebody who struggles with depression, suicidal thoughts, anything like that, having multiple people and knowing, okay, even if your friends aren't there, that there are programs out there that public programs to help people going through that. And so, I appreciate you talking about the gratitude, because at the end of the day, I think it all comes back to the gratitude. And it's so powerful in life, and it's going to do you're doing it and the other person loves it. I got so many messages back from people even that I just had a list of names of people that I kind of know. And I don't have super deep relationships with all these people, and people would text me back, that made my day, or I cried. Like, I was choking up making some of the videos. And so
that's so cool.
Yeah. And so if you ever feel down, like, express gratitude to other people, and it's going to help you. And hearing that you do that every day in the journal encourages me, because I said I was going to do something like that, and I just haven't made use of it, because I like to wake up early in the morning. Nobody else is awake. Nobody can bug me. And I thought about it, but now knowing that you are actually doing it and you're calling, multiple people a day, whatever, that's like raising the bar. Like, I want to do that now.
Like, obviously I'm not perfect. Like, there's days that I miss it or whatever. But the point is like the act of doing it, if I don't get around to calling those one person on that list or something, it just goes to the next day. And so it's just a constant reminder. And, we're inundated with so much stimulus that it's easy to forget things. And I think it's just being intentional, going back to like living intentionally. If that's part of it, I know how important continuing these relationships with people are. And, it's just, again, I feel like I am heavily focused on what I'm building because I have to be, but I also know that I'm not going to let that jeopardize the relationships and looking at how I can, whether it be assistance or just checking or just anything, and building those personal relationships with other people, because that's just, again, being a good friend. And we all need to be better at that.
Yeah.
I think we do, especially in today's day and age. Like a lot of people, if you ask, like a lot of people feel very alone, and I think it's just because we are surrounded by a bunch of crappy friends, and that's just what's happening.
Yep.
So I do want to know. I never got a voice memo from.
I don't
Where's
know.
mine?
I can go back through my notes. I'm sorry. Well, what I am now, I'm in like on my contacts, because I did a lot of clients in like my very direct circle.
Yeah.
People who live in Bozeman.
Oh.
You moved out of town,
Yeah.
but no, I'm going through, and I think I'm in like the letter C or D, and so in the coming months, so don't be surprised when you get a video.
So this is where you're like, the people that live in Bozeman.
Wait, wrong. He's messing with the soundboard. Hit the bottom left arrow. Left. One more. Yeah, there we go. Soundboard. Drops the mic. Get the glasses that fall. The Snoop Dogg.
This has been super awesome, man. Thank you for having me. And I love these types of conversations because it's very important messages. Like I do think that the topic of suicide and just being good friends and gratitude and all of that, like, it's so important to get out there. And, it doesn't matter who I am or any guest you end up having. Like, we all have cool, crazy stories and have been through different things, but like those messages are what is most important.
Couldn't agree more. We're all people. We all have struggles, and we're all here to, shine a light and help other people. So, no, Jusup, I really appreciate you taking the time to come in here and show me what an in-person studio can do. I'll be streaming quite a few of them, but the timeline of me getting an in-person studio so I can have these face-to-face conversations, I feel like got shrunk because you did that. And we'll definitely be hitting a polar plunge on Sunday. And so I appreciate your conversation. Check out Jusup's YouTube channel. He says you're Jusup11, right? Jusup11 on all social media stuff. You will be so entertained by his YouTube and all the videos that he does. It's exciting, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Check it out. But again, Jusup, thank you so much for coming on, and I'll see you on Sunday.
Thank you for having me, man.